Okay, now let's get back to that manhunt, mostly centered around Regina, which has to do with yesterday's stabbings. CBC's Bonnie Allen is in Regina. So, Bonnie, bring us up to speed. What's the latest?
Well, RCMP did issue a statement today updating the number of victims, saying that Miles and Damian Sanderson had stabbed 28 people, killing 10 of them, injuring 18. They also announced that charges have been laid against the two men, even though they are still on the loose and the manhunt continues. So those charges include, for Miles Sanderson, 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 1 count of break and enter. You can anticipate there would be more charges to come, so this is just the first set of charges. Damian Sanderson is charged with 1 count of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 1 count of break and enter. Now, the search continues. RCMP say hundreds of police officers from multiple police agencies and provinces have assisted and are assisting in the search for these two men, from the 911 operators who are receiving tips, to the frontline officers who are doing patrols, to the major crime investigators who are at James Smith Cree Nation as we speak, investigating 13 different crime scenes, both at the First Nation and at the nearby village of Weldon. Since the men are accused of stabbing multiple people at multiple locations, some randomly and some targeted. Now, Police Chief Evan Bray has also said that Regina police are very much treating it as though these two men are in this city, because there was a possible sighting yesterday. There's no information to suggest that they are somewhere else. So he says that he very much believes that there are people out there who know something and should be reporting it to police. Here's what he said.
There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of anxiety in our province and in our communities this morning and all day yesterday. And really, I think an important step for families and communities working through this will be to bring these two safely into custody. And so again, if anyone has any information, I would urge you to reach out to your local police service and let us know.
Now, police also issued another emergency alert that rang out on all of our cell phones again today, letting people know that these two men are still on the loose. They are considered dangerous people. People should be vigilant if they're traveling home from the long weekend, looking if there was any suspicious activity, that they are considered dangerous. Do not approach them. Do not pick up a hitchhikers, and really look for them anywhere. They could be in the black Nissan Rogue. They could be in a different vehicle. They could be apart.
Bonnie, what do we know about the victims so far?
Well, with 28 people stabbed, there is a lot of information coming out on social media with people talking about their loved ones who have lost. But the James Smith Cree Nation has requested that the media not enter the community at this time to give them privacy. Some family members are beginning to come forward with information. So we have been given permission from the family of 49-year-old Lana Head to share with you her face and her name. She was a security guard and a mother of 2, and her former partner, Michael Brett Burns, said that shock from yesterday has now turned to anger today. So 49-year-old Lana Head being one of the first victims to be named today, that she died, stabbed to death yesterday at James Smith Cree Nation.
Bonnie, you know, we've been covering the story all day, but just now when you said 28 people stabbed, it just really drives home how big this story is, how big the investigation is. Thanks so much. CBC's Bonnie Allen in Regina.
Welcome.
CBC's Devin Haru is also following the story for us, and he's looking at the community reaction to this story. We find him in the community of Weldon, where some of the stabbings took place, and he tells us what he's been hearing from the residents.
A shock, devastation, terror. That's what I'm hearing from residents here in this northeastern village. About 200 people live here. I've been on the ground for a few hours now, and I've walked these streets. It's a small village. One central road runs through the heart of it, and a few roads intersect that central road. Talking to residents, doors are locked. Not many people outside of their homes right now. As I walk along the streets, many people pressed up against the glass, looking out their windows. Police walking these streets, Natasha, trying to figure out what happened here yesterday morning. We are learning some new details about the harrowing moments and hours that unfolded in the wake of these stabbings. I talked to a resident here. Ruby works grew up here. She was horrified. She went into her home. She was there. She was terrified, waiting for any sort of update. That's when she heard a knock on her door. RCMP coming to her door, going to every door in this community, asking people if anyone was in the house with them, trying to find out any details. Here's some of my emotional conversation with Ruby Works.
I'm in shock. I'm terrified to go to sleep. I'm even terrified to open my door.
How are the people in this community, would you say?
This community they're all shocked. This community is never going to be the same. None of these people, even up in James Smith, didn't deserve to be brutally murdered like this. Both communities are destroyed. Our lives are shadowed, all of us in this community. This town is quiet. They all know, they don't know if they're going to come back again. That's what I'm terrified. I'm terrified these two men are going to come back and do it again.
A high level of fear, no doubt. You hear it in Ruby Works' voice. She mentioned the James Smith Cree Nation, which is about 20 kilometers down the road. Natasha, of course, they are reeling in that community as well, and we know they're getting resources. The Canadian Red Cross stepping in and helping out right now, but just a terrifying situation unfolding in northeastern Saskatchewan, and people remain locked in their homes awaiting any sort of update as this manhunt continues.
Deb, I can't imagine your community goes through this thing and that fear that they could come back. It's unbelievable. And on top of that, there was already quite a bit of movement and chaos this long weekend because people are generally out and about on Labor Day weekend. How is that affecting the search?
Yeah, Natasha, just to your first point, just being here, feeling it, and an eerie feeling on these streets. It's quiet, it's calm, people just so on edge. You mentioned it, a lot of movement. This is a Labor Day weekend. A lot of people in northern Saskatchewan would have been traveling to their cabins up in this area. Of course, it's Labor Day weekend, the Labor Day Classic football game, where so many people in this province travel from the north down to Regina to celebrate a football game. But on this Sunday, that celebration quickly turned to tragedy. It is being felt across this entire province, and it would certainly complicate the search for RCMP when you have so many vehicles in transit on those highways. We know that there are checkpoints set up across the province. People are on edge, Natasha, as this search continues, and you feel it everywhere you go in this province right now.
CBC's Devin Heroux in Weldon, Saskatchewan. In the aftermath of yesterday's incident in Saskatchewan, there will be no doubt questions about how the police have responded. CBC's David Thurton is looking into the police accountability angle of this story. David, what have you found so far?
Hey, Natasha, it's still very early days right now, early hours, and rightly so. The focus should be on the victims of this incident and, of course, finding the two men who were involved. But media and others are probably asking questions right now about, police accountability. Did the police do everything that they could have done to prevent more victims, more carnage? Did they do everything to warn the population that, there might have been a risk to their life and safety? That was a key question, a key criticism when it came to the 2020 Portapique mass shooting in Nova Scotia. RCMP was widely criticized for, not alerting the public in time when it came to that event that happened in 2020 in Nova Scotia. I spoke with a police studies professor in Saskatchewan. He said the two situations are different. Here's how he described how the police responded to the incident in Saskatchewan yesterday.
Getting that response within an hour is actually really timely. Initially, there's confusion at these serious incidents that the officers responding might not know exactly what has transpired. There was 13 locations where these events occurred. So it's a very complex situation, and still to get an announcement out within 90 minutes, I think that's pretty timely. I'm not sure that they could have done it much sooner.
So Professor Riddell there saying that, the police in Saskatchewan did a pretty good job alerting the public, not just of the situation that was unfolding, but that there was a threat to their safety, Natasha.
And David, we've also been hearing about the challenges for policing, particularly in some of these rural areas. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, so that same professor based in Saskatchewan was saying that, policing in rural communities is an ongoing challenge for a number of reasons. He spoke about, of course, the amount of area that police have to cover, the wide distances that they have to travel to attend to response calls. In fact, he said that, compared to an urban area, it could take 3 to 4 times longer for police to respond to 911 calls in rural communities. He says, more resources probably are needed to cut down that response time. But the question is, do taxpayers want to pay for this, especially when we live in societies where, the call and the debate is surfacing and raging about the size of police budgets. Natasha.
CBC's David Thurton in Ottawa. Thank you.